call to order. The March 1st working session of the State Board of Education. Mr. Hayward, we have a quorum.
Madam President, with 7 members, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have an agenda?
We do have an agenda for us. First thing on our agenda is discussion of the resolution related to physical education standards. I forgot to print that, so Paul is running down to get the printed copy. So if we could move to residency requirements first, I would appreciate it. Residency requirements, I sent out the revisions to the residency requirements in the meeting materials. Did anyone have any questions related to the changes in the regulations from our previously approved version? Great. Then what I would assume is that with unanimous consent, we'll have that on our March 15th agenda for approval. Great. So here are the physical education resolution approval. As Laura mentioned at our public meeting in February, OSSE has come to our meetings a number of times to discuss the revisions to the physical education standard and answered a number of questions related to them. Does anyone have any questions related to the resolution that will be considered at the March 15th meeting? Great. Then that will be on. Of course.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so the date will be changed, right?
Correct. Any other questions for board members? Great. If there are any prior to the meeting, feel free to just email me and we can make corrections or additions to the resolution at that point. Seeing that Ruth is not here quite yet, I would suggest that we move for the immigration transgender resolution. Jack, if you have comments on that?
Yeah, thank you, John Paul. This is an issue that in the last several weeks has 2 issues that have gained a bit of attention in the last couple of weeks. And in the last week or so, the deputy mayor, the mayor, the Public Charter School Board, and DCPS have put out various statements and comments regarding safe access to facilities, including restrooms for our transgender and other students, as well as ensuring that our immigrant students, regardless of immigration status, are able to attend our public schools and receive a high-quality, free public education. Knowing that and understanding where, in particular, my constituents are, I wanted to propose a resolution, which is basically a statement on behalf of the State Board that would address these 2 issues and provide us some action as well in terms of directing our Administration and Budget Committee, which Mr. Whedon chairs, to develop a non-discrimination and equity policy for the State Board. When we adopted our policy manual, we did not include that type of policy, and I think it would behoove us all to do so. This is, I circulated this for review, and I'm happy to take edits and comments, and I'm happy to talk with anyone offline as well. I just think this is something that we should do on behalf of all of our students across the district, whether they go to traditional schools or our public charter schools. I also put in some information about us being 95%, our schools being 95% compliant with the Youth Bullying Prevention Act. Suzanne Greenfield in the Office of Human Rights has been very clear and has driven a lot of that work, and she's been very effective in that. And one piece that the LGBT community in particular has brought to my attention is that while I think the council just moved last month to require baby changing stations in all restrooms. There is no requirement that municipal buildings have an all-gender restroom. I think it probably makes sense for schools that have adequate facilities and all municipal buildings, frankly, because a lot of our students receive services at other municipal buildings, to have access to all gender restrooms. So I know I just sent this today, so I know not many people have had time to review it, but I'm happy to take comments, I'm happy to take questions, and I'm happy to work with folks on edits to this resolution. Well,
So first of all, thank you, Jack, for your leadership on this. I'm really glad you drafted it. One question that I had, and I'm not sure if anybody in the room has more information on this, but I was listening to NPR, and the defendant behind the Supreme Court case said that he did not want gender non-conforming bathrooms. He wanted to be able to enter the bathroom of his choice. And so I do wonder, yours is, if I read it correctly, it's about just gender non-conforming bathrooms, or sorry, it should just be all gender bathrooms.
Yep.
And I do wonder if there's anything that others or you would want to add about also allowing students to choose to enter the bathroom of their choice, which is, I think, the basis of the North Carolina school.
I'm happy to work with you on language on that and work with the advocacy community on that. The third whereas does include a statement about equal access to facilities, and I think that would capture it, but if we want to be a little more direct, we can work on that.
Yeah, and I would completely follow whatever the advocacy community thinks is appropriate there, but I just wanted to add that.
I'll post questions on my folks. Additional questions? If not, thank you all. Feel free to email me or call me offline if you'd like on any additional questions or edits or improvements.
Thank you. Ruth still isn't here, but I think it might be helpful prior to the OSCE presentation on what they've been hearing from their public comments on ESSA, for each of the board members to report out on their community meetings or the meetings that they've been having in their wards related to ESSA. Sure.
Do we need to have any discussion about residency?
So we actually had a little bit of a discussion before you got here. We can happily do the presentation. OSCE did have a presentation related to residency if members are interested, or we can send it later if there's no additional discussion. It's up to you.
I'm a huge fan of sending presentations either before or after, because I would rather spend our time in discussion.
Right.
And not going through a PowerPoint deck. That's my personal preference, but if others feel like we should spend our time that way, I'm totally open to that.
My question is just, I know the ESSA discussion will be
Sure.
extended, and I just want to see if Neela should be here or not. Either for discussion
That's
or
fair.
both.
I have a couple questions about residency,
Sure.
but I can do that offline if you want to.
No, I think you should go ahead and share them now.
We should
Yeah.
do it.
And we should, maybe we could start with the questions and send the PowerPoint around.
Yeah,
Great.
there's no new substantive
There's-
information.
it was
It's
just
summary
slides.
highlight of
Exactly.
the
Perfect.
Okay.
information you already had.
Marcus.
So about, I'm sorry, I'm just getting my notes together. So for tuition repayment, for students who are deemed to be non-residents after they've already attended the school, is that a retroactive repayment for the time that they've attended the school, or do they start paying tuition payments?
It can
From
be
that.
retroactive as well.
Okay.
But it's not determined by us.
Exactly.
Right.
That usually goes through the Office of Attorney General.
Gotcha.
And if there's a settlement, for instance, they may settle on different terms. But
Okay. And I know it says that if per pupil funding has already been assigned to that LEA, that OSCE can withhold subsequent funding. What is that subsequent funding, or usually what would that be?
for charter schools where they're paid on that quarterly basis,
Okay.
they wouldn't be deemed in the regular funding formula moving forward, in the same way that we don't include non-residents in
Okay.
that calculation.
Now, students who, and I know the plan talked a little bit about extreme hardship or family hardship, that could play a role for students who become non-residents because of family hardship. Maybe a parent or a permanent guardian who was a DC resident passed away or was incarcerated or what have you, and now they're living with a guardian in another state. For instance, they moved with an aunt or uncle in Maryland. I don't know if I saw anything that talked about whether they would be guaranteed their slot until the end of the year or to the end of the terminating grade, or how would that work for students in those situations?
That's a great question. I think typically we would look at that, knowing that circumstance and want to work with that student. So certainly nothing would be like hard and fast.
Maybe we should follow up.
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know some of our foster care parents who serve DC students live out of state. For DC students in the foster who are still wards of the district but have a non-permanent placement out of state, are they're still guaranteed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They're still
No
eligible.
tuition
Gotcha.
there. Yes.
Okay.
And there are different provisions for students in foster care, set out particularly in the regulations.
Okay, cool, because I read through it, but I wasn't 100% sure about that, so thank you. But yeah, if you guys could just follow up with me on that about, students who kind of face those mid-year or, midstream hardships, how we work with that.
Yes, we'll do.
Absolutely, thank you.
I have a question in regards to, when there's a parent that lives in and a parent that lives out. And if there's joint custody, that means they can come to DC students?
Yes.
But if one parent has, the legal guardian's joint custody, but one has legal guardiancy, but they're the legal parent, does that mean the child cannot come because?
If there's some joint custody, the child can still come.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
There would be a lot of Maryland license plates.
Yeah.
You ask and they say one parent did.
One thing I'll just share is, I met recently with the state superintendent of the Maryland Department of Education and Kevin Maxwell, the superintendent of Prince George's County Schools, to talk about whether we could ever establish a data sharing agreement between our states just around serving students who move across state lines. So it was a general discussion to start that conversation. But I raised that, one thing we hear is, as you said, frequently we hear from parents, we see lots of Maryland license plates and have this question about residency. And just, I don't want to make too much of this because it was an offhand comment, but they just shared with me that they hear the exact flip side of that all the time, and they had never heard our version. They hear all the time questions from Prince George's County about whether DC residents are coming to their schools and whether there's residency fraud on their end. So it was just interesting, right, as an anecdote, right? And their flip side of it is they have a countywide school bus system, like they use transportation, and so when they see students coming off the metro, when they have a school bus system, it's their version of seeing Maryland license plates. So I just put that out there to say I get the anecdotes are there, and it turns out that there's anecdotes there on both sides.
Really quickly, I noticed recently I was out in front of a school and I saw a couple metal signs that said DC residency. Do you suspect students from out of school? And it had a hotline number. Do you know who put those up?
Yeah, we do a public information campaign. I don't know about metal signs, but there are posters that we have up in all schools. We've done bus ads before, and there's a residency fraud hotline that can be called anytime, and we investigate those tips along with any findings of non-residency that come up during the enrollment audit.
Good.
I guess kind of separate from the official policy, I think we probably all had instances where we hear about Maryland or Virginia students being, coming to school in DC, and oftentimes, in some cases, a lot of them are on the basketball team or on the football team, right? So how does this happen? I guess in the scale that it's happening, how do schools tend to get around that, and how are we kind of tightening the reins on that?
So again, anytime there's an allegation that's reported to us, we conduct an investigation. I think that sometimes where the challenges come in are, if there's an allegation made, we will not ask the student to stop coming to the school or charge tuition until everyone has gone through a full due process hearing, right? Like that's just, everyone has a right to attend school. If it is an athlete, there's different circumstances that I don't necessarily want to get into because we don't have our athletics folks here. But in terms of enrollment in a school, we would not challenge the enrollment in a school until they've gone through the full due process hearing, which can take a long time. There's an